Discover the amazing courage of a store clerk who faced robbers and uncovered a hidden mafia boss. Kevin stood behind the register, his eyes scanning the dusty aisles filled with half-empty shelves. The mundane routine of ringing up groceries, answering questions about sales, and counting down the minutes felt like an unshakable weight on his shoulders. At 30, he seemed like a ghost in the vibrant lives of those around him. Every day tested the depths of his resolve as he juggled the care of his ailing father, whose laughter had become a faint echo in his memory, drowning in the harsh reality of illness. In a town where connections mattered more than effort, he was but a mere footnote in the lives of customers who rarely recognized his dedication. This particular afternoon, Kevin felt an unsettling jolt in the air as a group of masked robbers barreled through the glass doors, guns drawn and intentions clear. The world slowed, a surreal gap forming between fear and determination as his heart raced, and adrenaline surged through him. In that surreal moment, he realized he wasn't just a bystander. He was a man fueled by a sudden, fierce need to protect the quiet family that had sacrificed so much, protect his father's waning dreams, and protect the innocent shoppers frozen in panic. "Stop!" he yelled, his voice betraying a tremor as he stepped forward, confronting the chaos head-on. It was a desperate gamble, an impulse driven by moral instinct that shocked even him. One of the robbers paused, lowering his weapon just slightly, and Kevin's breath hitched as recognition washed over him. The robber's eyes held a glint that triggered a memory, a connection to someone he thought he'd only read about in hushed whispers, a dangerous mafia boss who held the strings of life and death in this town. As the robbers fled, adrenaline morphed into a tempest of conflicting emotions within Kevin. He grappled with an overwhelming sense of moral obligation to report the crime and his father's vulnerability hanging in the balance. The thought twisted inside him, a relentless knot, as he remembered the long conversations he'd had with his father about honesty and strength. What if the mafia's influence extended to him? Was he putting his family in greater danger? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Days after the robbery passed in a blur, Kevin began to spiral deeper into anxiety. With each new twinge of fear, he recalled his father's fading strength, the childlike laughter replaced by faint coughs. Just when he'd thought he could forge a way through the shadows of terror, a truth erupted from his father's past, cascading into his life like a violent storm. The mafia boss, the man behind the mask. There was a buried connection, a thread binding Kevin's father to this very danger. Panic clawed at him as he fought against betrayal and loyalty, feelings swinging wildly inside him like a pendulum. Could he report the robbery, seek justice? Or would that risk everything he held dear? Each moment intensified his anguish. This choice would not just determine the future of his family, but his very soul. The crescendo of uncertainty loomed like a thunderstorm, and with it came the dawning realization: the line between fear and courage was about to be blurred forever. Would he rise against the tide or succumb to the darkness? The face-off was on the horizon, nearing with every heartbeat. Kevin's mind raced, teetering on the edge of a precipice. Each day morphed into a relentless cycle of dread and second-guessing. In between stock checks and customer interactions, his thoughts were entangled in a web of ethical questions. He felt trapped not just by the weight of familial responsibility but by the unwillingness to confront the truth buried in his father's history. Each time he glanced at the checkout register or heard the chime of the door, it echoed in his mind like a threat lurking just outside. He caught a fleeting glimpse of himself in the store's mirror while restocking the shelves, a shadow of a man coping with fear, loss, and an obligation that felt insurmountable. His father had raised him with integrity, never swaying from the tenets of right and wrong. Yet, now Kevin felt as though that upbringing had anchored him to inaction. What did it mean to be a son, a man, in the shadow of what might be a crime family? The knot in his stomach tightened with each visit to the hospital. His father's prognosis hung like a specter over Kevin's every moment, intensifying the fear of losing him just as he was beginning to comprehend the dangers of their reality. In quiet corners of his mind, he envisioned scenarios each darker than the last. What if reporting the robbery drew the Mafia's wrath upon them? What if they were somehow already aware of his father's past and were watching him? When Kevin returned to work the next day, his newfound resolve clashed with old habits. The familiarity of the store's aisles felt ominous. Each customer's face was a mask of normalcy that contrasted with the chaos brewing within him. His decision wavered like the flickering fluorescent lights above him, leaving shadows of doubt lingering in the corners. He stole glances at the security footage, replaying the events of the robbery over and over. Each frame solidified the urgency to act, igniting an ember of defiance buried deep within him. The robbers had showcased their power, but what if he could seize an opportunity to confront that power through courage? The knowledge of his father's entanglement set up a paradox: act in fear of further danger or act in defense of truth. Later that night, Kevin resolved to research the Mafia connections he'd been hearing about. He scoured online forums, looking into local news articles, even discreetly questioning a few old-timers at the diner about the man who held the town's fear in his grip. With every piece of information, Kevin consumed raw terror and empowerment. That flicker of courage began kindling into a focused flame. Knowledge was strength, and perhaps he could harness it. By morning, Kevin had a list of names, connections, and potential allies that could lead him to the truth. The interplay of his father's past and the present danger confronted him with a stubborn sense of purpose. But with each step forward, dread clawed at his confidence. What if this path led to a confrontation he wasn't ready for? As the sun set, a new determination blossomed inside him. The time for hesitation was over. The moment approached when he would have to make a choice not just for his safety, but for his father and the life they used to share. His phone buzzed with a message, startling him from his reverie. A name appeared, someone willing to talk about the Mafia lurking in the shadows. This is it, he whispered to himself, tension buzzing in his veins. He took a deep breath, preparing to step into the unknown. The path ahead would change everything. In the face of darkness, he was now on the cusp of revealing truths that threatened to upend his world. Where this decision would lead him remained shrouded in uncertainty. One thing was clear: Kevin was ready to face the storm. But as he pressed send on a reply asking for a meeting, a dark thought flickered in the corners of his mind. Could uncovering the truth put his father's life in greater jeopardy? A cool breeze wafted through the abandoned parking lot as Kevin approached the agreed meeting spot, a dimly lit diner tucked at the edge of town. The flickering neon sign overhead pulsed with a rhythm that mirrored his own turbulent heartbeat. He had replayed the conversation in his mind countless times, each scenario twisting and distorting along paths he preferred not to tread. Would this informant carry some burden of guilt, or perhaps an even darker agenda? Inside, the stale scent of coffee mingled with grease, a dissonance of comfort and discomfort fighting for dominance. Only a few patrons occupied the scattered booths, their attention glued to the flickering television set in the corner. Kevin slid into a booth near the back, staying inconspicuous while scanning for any sign of the contact. He had resolved to regain control, to finally unearth the reality behind the facade. His thoughts churned as he gripped the laminated menu, a distraction playing its part in staving off anxiety. He kept reminding himself of the purpose behind this meeting. Truth had a way of chiseling through the thin ice of complacency. With every minute passed, however, the air thickened with uncertainty, each tick of the clock amplifying the weight of the moment. The risk felt imposing, like a rising tide threatening to pull him under before he could take a breath. Then, a figure appeared, a middle-aged man wearing a leather jacket, his face rutted with lines of experience, like a map etched with misfortunes. Kevin forced himself to meet the stranger's gaze, stealing for whatever truths lay ahead. "Kevin?" the man asked, a hint of calculation in his eyes. "Yeah," he replied, forcing the word through clenched teeth. "You're the one who knows about the Mafia." "Depends on what you want to know," the man said, taking a seat opposite him, leaning forward, as if the truth could be found in the space between them. Kevin faltered momentarily, the fire of determination flickering. How much should he reveal about himself? He needed information, but what might this man demand in return? "I need to understand what happened during the robbery, and about the connections," he managed to say, consuming his fear with a deep breath. The man nodded knowingly. "You're in over your head, kid. This isn't just about a couple of goons, it's about power rooted deep in your father's past. You think you can just dive into that pool without drowning?" The word struck him like a cold slap. "I have to know the truth." My father, the weight of his father's legacy dangled precariously in the air. Each word felt raw, a thread unraveling as he confronted the complicated reality binding them. Ties to the past can be chains, or they can be keys, the man mused. Sometimes both. Knowing your father isn't just a matter of love, it's a lesson in survival. The dichotomy twisted Kevin's insides. As he listened, the cracks in his father's integrity felt insurmountable, yet there was also a resilience in his father that Kevin had yet to truly understand. What if facing the truth had the potential to forge a path to freedom instead of only entrapment? "Are you willing to take that risk?" The man continued, pinning Kevin with probing intensity. "I will," Kevin declared, the words falling from his lips with unexpected conviction. "I have to." "Then you're going to need more than just guts. You'll need a plan, and trust me, you're not the only one looking for answers," he warned, each syllable laced with undertones of caution. As Kevin absorbed the gravity of those words, a new concern formed, a realization that his quest had potentially far-reaching consequences that could ripple back to his father and then to him. What kind of allies or adversaries would he encounter in this shadowy world? The meeting ended with loose agreements, and as Kevin stepped outside into the bustling evening, the air shimmered with possibility yet thickened with danger. He felt a rush of adrenaline, but beneath it lingered the nagging doubt of what he could lose. With the resolve to unravel the mystery gripping his family, he also felt the pressure aggregating around him, an invisible hand twisting with every choice he made. The night ahead held more than just unsettling revelations. Perhaps it would shine a light on hidden strengths he never knew he possessed. But he also sensed the unmistakable weight of impending confrontation. Was he ready? And more importantly, what darkness awaited him on the path to the truth? Kevin paced outside the diner, his thoughts racing with the implications of the conversation he just had. The wind carried whispers of uncertainty, and he clenched his jaw in determination. Each step seemed to reverberate with the weight of the choices he had yet to make. No longer could he linger in ignorance. He had declared his intention to uncover the truth, but now the reality of that commitment began to sink in. He made a decision. Instead of returning home, he would head to the library, a sanctuary for knowledge and a strategic start for his newfound mission. He needed a plan. The mere acknowledgement of that was a stepping stone. As the darkened streets blurred past him, he couldn't shake the feeling he was stepping into unknown territory, a world shaped by his father's tangled past filled with secrets and shadows. The library stood tall against the twilight sky, an almost comforting beacon of learning. Inside, the air was cool, filled with the scent of aged paper. Kevin navigated the aisles with purpose, scanning the spines of books. He needed to familiarize himself with the underbelly of organized crime terminology, factions, histories, anything that could provide him an edge. Flipping through a book on criminal organizations, a familiar tension tightened in his chest as he read about the motives and complexities of power. He had always viewed these figures from a distance, shadows in the periphery of his life. Now, they were beginning to form a landscape he had to traverse. Hours slipped away as he immersed himself, capturing names, timelines, and connections. The deeper he dug, the clearer the fractures in his father's legacy became. It was unsettling to know that the man he loved had perhaps built his empire on a foundation of treachery. Yet within that realization was a burgeoning resolve not just to confront his father's past but to understand it so profoundly that it no longer held power over him. Contemplating this duality became his driving force, the potential power of insight against the pull of family legacy. That night, his mind began to piece together not just facts, but also strategies. Kevin mapped out a plan that could help him build a network of contacts, allies in clandestine spheres who could provide him the information he needed. The more knowledge he amassed, the stronger he felt. Driven by a newfound tenacity, he decided the next step would be to connect with the informant again. The man had hinted that others were involved, and Kevin realized that understanding those layers was critical. As he stood to leave, however, a crushing doubt weighed on him. Could he trust this stranger? Would his quest for truth entangle him in more dangerous webs? Stepping into the cool night air, Kevin felt caught between a past he was desperate to understand and a future clouded by the choices he must now face. He was no longer just a bystander, he was an active participant in a complex game, where every move could have far-reaching consequences. Each decision would echo in the corridors of power his father had once navigated with ease. As he walked away from the library, the moonlight illuminated his path but also threw longer shadows behind him, a reminder of the dangers that lurked just beyond his grasp. What awaited him as he sought to unearth the secrets of his father's past? He needed to prepare, for the next confrontation could lead him closer to the truth, or deeper into a labyrinth he might not escape. With that thought hanging in the air, Kevin steeled himself. This was the moment to act, to delve deeper. Would he find friends among foes, or would the darkness consume him before he could even begin to understand the light? In the days that followed, Kevin devoted himself to relentless research. Each visit to the library peeled back layers of his father's past, exposing the intersection of power and loyalty that defined the world he was entangled in. The stories of betrayal, double-crossings, and shattered allegiances became a backdrop for his own internal conflict. Understanding this intricate web was more than just an intellectual pursuit, it was a necessary excavation of his own identity. He expanded his search beyond books, gravitating towards online forums and databases filled with first-hand accounts from former associates of criminal organizations. Each new piece of information nudged him closer to an unsettling awareness and understanding that the past held more than just family pride, it bore the weight of consequences that could impact his future. With a more robust grasp of the terrain ahead of him, Kevin paused to reflect. What did he truly seek? Was it revenge for the familial betrayal, or a resolve to clear his father's name? As he engaged with this dichotomy, a thought surfaced: he could redefine what his father's legacy meant to him. Instead of succumbing to anger or self-pity, he would forge a path based on reclaiming agency over his family's past. Determined, he reached out to the informant he had met previously. A quick phone call led him to an obscure bar on the fringes of town, a place shrouded in shadowy whispers. The very notion of entering stirred a storm of anxiety within him. It was a tangible leap deeper into the abyss. Yet, with each heartbeat echoing his resolve, he committed to facing this new phase with clarity. As he stepped inside the bar, the dimly lit space felt foreign. The chatter of murmured conversations blended with the clinking of glasses, and the scent of cheap whiskey lingered in the air. Kevin's instincts heightened, sensing danger mingling with the anticipation of knowledge. He spotted the informant, a grizzled man with a knowing smirk nodding as Kevin approached. The conversation quickly shifted from pleasantries to the heart of the matter, the connections between organized crime figures linked to his father's activities. Kevin listened intently, absorbing details like a sponge, each revelation grounding him further into the reality of his father's world. The informant revealed names of allies and adversaries alike, dissecting the labyrinthine connections that stretched beyond what Kevin could have anticipated. There were whispers of betrayal, extended hands that could become weapons, and the mercurial balance of power. But with each fact came something darker. Kevin's anticipation was tinged with the grim understanding that every answer could deepen his entanglement in a reality he was still grappling to comprehend. The thrill of discovery that had initially fueled his quest began to morph into a trepidation that curled in his stomach. In that moment, the informant leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Understand this, kid. The deeper you dig, the more you'll reveal. Just be careful who you approach. Friends can turn into foes in the blink of an eye." Those words struck a chord, echoing the very doubts he had skated around since the beginning of this odyssey. Who among those he would encounter could genuinely be trusted? Could he navigate the treacherous waters of his father's legacy without losing himself in the process? As he left the bar, Kevin faced a new challenge: to embrace the truth not merely as a piece of information, but as a defining force in his life. He was not just confronting the remnants of his father's actions, he was creating his own identity amid the wreckage. With the night air cool against his skin, he felt renewed purpose building within him, a blend of courage and caution, the resolve to push forward. Yet, a lingering question taunted him: was he strong enough to face whatever revelations might be waiting just around the corner? And as he pondered this, his phone buzzed, a notification lighting up the dark screen. It was a message from an unknown number. Before he could process the sudden urgency, a pulse of anxiety raced through him. Who could it be? What information did they hold that might change everything? This was the point of no return. Curiosity wrestled fiercely with trepidation as he prepared to open it. Kevin's hand trembled slightly as he glanced at the message on his phone. Just 3 words, "We need to talk." There was an urgency that struck him, compelling curiosity that rippled through his veins. The unknown sender felt like a specter from the narratives he had been unearthing, a reminder that he was not merely a spectator in a family saga but an active participant. He hesitated, the internal turmoil swirling within him. Should he respond? Would this lead him closer to the truth, or pull him into danger's unforgiving grip? The very idea of potentially stepping further down the rabbit hole exhilarated and terrified him. Questions jostled for dominance. Who was this? What could they reveal that he didn't already know? Compelled by a mix of instinct and excitement, he typed out a quick reply, "Where?" He waited, each second a beat that echoed his growing anxiety. Tension coiled tightly around his heart, an ever-present reminder of the stakes involved. A chime announced the response almost immediately. Old warehouse by the docks. Midnight. The docks? The very thought brought back a rush of images related to the darker dealings of organized crime. What entered his mind was the pungent aroma of saltwater and rust, the echoes of a reality drenched in shadows. If he accepted this invitation, it could mean stepping into a world he wasn't entirely prepared for, yet something deep inside urged him on. He had spent so long disentangling himself from the past that perhaps to grasp the future, he first needed to confront the heart of the chaos. Deep down, Kevin understood that this meeting represented more than just a confrontation with the unknown. It was a vital step toward reclaiming agency over his life, away from the shadows of his father's legacy. After deliberating for several moments, he made up his mind. He would go, but he would be cautious. He texted a friend, someone who didn't know the depths of what he was delving into, just to provide a safety net. Should things go awry, at least someone would know where he had gone. As he made his way to the docks, the streets morphed from familiar neighborhood corners into the foreboding landscapes of his suspicions. The shadows lengthened in the fading light, and the air grew thick with the briny stench of the sea mixed with unspoken fears. He rolled his shoulders back, trying to breathe through the tension that constricted his chest. Arriving at the warehouse, Kevin's instincts sharpened. The building loomed before him, its weathered facade a testament to years gone by, but emotions tied to those years were alive and crackling. He stepped cautiously toward the entrance, each footfall reverberating against the hollowing echoes of a past he was trying to piece together. Pushing open the door, he was met with an almost oppressive darkness, the faint outlines of crates and machinery visible in the dim light. His heart pounded with the fear of the unknown, but he couldn't turn back now. He had crossed the threshold in search of answers, in search of himself. From the shadows, a figure emerged. Kevin's breath caught in his throat as the silhouette sharpened itself into a recognizable form. It was the informant, but not just the grizzled man he had met earlier. Another figure stood nearby, clad in a sharp suit that seemed utterly at odds with the decrepit surroundings. The face was obscured, but the aura exuded intimidation, an energy suggesting power intertwined with danger. "What you're looking for isn't what you expect," the suit spoke, voice smooth yet laced with underlying menace. "You're diving into a world that doesn't play by any rules, you know." Kevin's pulse raced, the weight of his journey crashing down upon him. He was poised on a precarious edge, desperately fighting the urge to retreat. "I need to know the truth," he managed to reply, voice steadier than he felt. With a subtle nod, the informant stepped aside, allowing the suited figure to step forward. "Then you're going to have to prove you're worthy of knowing it." This was the moment everything hinged upon. It could lead to the undoing of everything he held, or to the beginning of something far greater than he had imagined. As Kevin stood on that threshold, he realized the time had come to not just face his past, but to make sense of it in the unfolding of his future. Would he make the right choices, or would he risk everything in the pursuit of truth? And in that uncertain moment, the question carved out a new trajectory in his mind: what would the cost of knowledge be? The air was thick with a tangible tension, and Kevin's determination battled against his instinct to flee. He felt the weight of the suited figure's gaze as if it bore through him, assessing his worthiness and resolve. The informant, a silent witness, shifted slightly to the side, power dynamics clearly at play. "What do you want me to do?" Kevin asked, his voice barely straying above a whisper. The request hit him like a brick. He had willingly walked into the lion's den, but now he stood uneasily on the precipice of danger, the reality of his situation dawning upon him. The figure stepped closer, their features still hidden within shadows. "You're here for answers, yes? But truth isn't given freely, it is earned. You'll need to prove yourself to us and to yourself," they said, the coolness of their tone juxtaposed against the looming chaos of the warehouse around them. Kevin's mind raced. What could they possibly require of him? A plea for trust echoed within him. Until this moment, he had been striving to disengage from the past, but now he had to engage with it in ways he had not anticipated. Digging deep versus staying safe, both options weighed heavily on his shoulders. Prove myself how? Distaste for weakness stung at his pride, yet he was aware that this moment was about understanding his capabilities, far beyond his existing limitations. The suited figure's lips curved into a semblance of a smirk. "You have to show us that you're not just a product of your environment. You have to go beyond the Kevin your father shaped. Get me what I need, and you might just earn your freedom to know more." "What do you want?" Panic set in, seeping into his veins, overshadowing his previous bravado. Kevin focused on his breathing, reminding himself that fear could be a catalyst as much as a prison. "Information about your father's network. The flow of goods through the docks has some loose ends, and they pointed an accusing finger. You have the connections we need. It's time to leverage them." It hit him like an electric shock. This was exactly what he had been hoping to uncover, but now he was trapped in the very web he sought to untangle. What had begun as a quest for self-understanding twisted into a choice riddled with moral implications. "I don't want to be involved in this." As the words left his mouth, he felt a flicker of rebellion within him. Determination bubbled forth, ignited by the thought of breaking free from his father's legacy. "Then you'll remain in the dark, forever a captive of your own fear," the suited figure replied, voice dripping with disdain. "You want knowledge? You must get your hands dirty. There's your dilemma, comfort in ignorance or the risk of the truth." Kevin's soul wrestled with conflicting emotions. Each heartbeat thudded against the notion that this might be his chance to redefine who he was, to step out of his father's shadow. The stakes were tangible now. He was about to confront the ghost of his past and perhaps rewrite his narrative. His internal compass steered toward the light of truth, illuminating the dark corners of his mind. "If I do this, it's not for you," he affirmed, feeling an unfamiliar strength coalesce within him. "It's for me, for all the choices I've made that I want to take back." The suited figure raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Very well, Kevin. But be warned, walking this path can change everything. It won't be the past you're escaping, it will be a choice of who you aim to become." As he weighed the gravity of his decision, Kevin contemplated the unfamiliar territory he was about to traverse. The cost of knowledge wasn't just a question lingering in his mind, it formed the bedrock of a new personal battle set before him. He might unearth truths he would rather keep buried. Yet, self-discovery often required sacrificial leaps into the dark. With a new resolve hardening his heart, he stepped forward. "Let us do this." The suited figure nodded, the shadows swirling around them now rippling with the promise of revelation. In that moment, Kevin realized the weight of his decisions might not only affect his life but the lives of those intertwined with the very threads of his father's expanse of influence. As he prepared to step deeper into this world, a voice echoed inside him. What other unexpected truths lie at the intersection of lies and loyalty? Where would this pursuit of knowledge ultimately lead him? The first steps into this new reality felt like a plunge into icy water. Kevin's heart raced as the suited figure continued to regard him, their shadowy presence a reminder of the stakes at hand. He had committed to this path, yet every cell in his body screamed for self-preservation. Taking a deep breath, he endeavored to quell the rising tide of trepidation. He had navigated life as a store clerk, surrounded by the mundane rhythms of restocking shelves and ringing up purchases, far removed from the chaos that unfolded around him. Yet, here in this warehouse, the might of his father's legacy loomed larger than ever. This was his pivotal moment, a chance to morph from a passive participant to an active player in his own story. Time is of the essence, the suited figure urged, interrupting his spiral of thoughts. Meet your informant tomorrow evening. They'll provide you with the initial contacts. You'll need to convince them to bring you into the fold. Kevin's mind began constructing a plan, weighing the credibility of each individual he could potentially leverage. Could he trust them? Would they recognize the fire within him, or would they dismiss him as an extension of his father's shadow? Doubt sat like a heavy stone in his gut, its grim presence testing his resolve. He had never been an agent of change. Could he truly morph into one? A word of caution, the figure added, sensing the brewing storm within him. Approach with respect. Your name will be both your greatest ally and your deadliest foe. You're not just a clerk anymore, you are carrying your father's weight. The reminder stung a sharp jab to the very core of his existence. He had spent so long fighting against that weight, only to realize he now had to embrace it, to wield it. Determination flickered in his chest, strong enough to push him forward. Yes, I'll meet this informant and follow through, he asserted, surprise rippling through him as he felt the assurance in his own voice. With each pulse of conviction, he stripped away layers of doubt, leaving raw ambition exposed beneath. And I will not act as he did. I'll navigate this differently. The figure studied him, and Kevin almost thought he could see a glimmer of approval in their eyes. Encouraged, he began to strategize, scouring areas in his mind for individuals who might help him. Each former co-worker, each name he recalled, turned into potential allies. With every re-examination, remnants of his past transformed into resources that could assist him, connections he could leverage for his ascent into this dangerous hierarchy. However, as excitement surged through him, it was quickly doused by apprehension. The reality of what he was stepping into loomed large. The stakes were no longer confined to his personal journey but also involved the safety of others unwittingly entwined in his father's web. What if he failed? What if he uncovered something he wasn't prepared to handle? The gravity of his pursuit threatened to crush him. I have to prepare, he whispered, the admission crystallizing the enormity of his choice. His next move could pivot not just his life but also the window through which he viewed the legacy he had inherited. The weight felt increasingly suffocating, but as it wrapped around him, it birthed a fierce resolve. He needed a plan, one that would enable him to gather more than just scraps of information but to carve out a new identity, one unshackled from the haunting shadows of his father's influence. In that dim light, with uncertainty as his only companion, Kevin felt the first flicker of transformation. This will be my fight, he murmured, staring into the uncertainty of his future. With the night drawing near, sparking hidden truths echoing within him, he steeled himself for a confrontation that tested every fiber of his being. As he stepped away from the warehouse, the air felt charged with unmarked potential, igniting a quiet ferocity within him that longed to break free. What uncommon strength would he discover within the currents of danger and deceit he was about to navigate? The answer lay ahead, shrouded in mystery and demand. In the quiet solitude of his small apartment, Kevin sat at the cluttered table, a fading overhead light casting long shadows across the room. He felt the chill of uncertainty creeping in yet again, threatening to engulf his initial resolve. The old wooden table was a relic of a time when his life revolved around simple routines, counting change, dealing with customers, the predictable rhythm of folding clothes. It felt almost foreign now, a reminder of stability overshadowed by emerging complexities. He opened his laptop, the screen flickering to life, illuminating a world where he could create a new narrative for himself. He began searching for the informant, digging through layers of forums and social media, each click echoing his determination. He needed information specific and actionable to approach this contact with confidence. A growing sense of purpose fueled his fingers as they danced over the keyboard, each stroke becoming a part of his burgeoning strategy. As hours slipped away, Kevin began to see patterns in his father's business dealings. Information that had once felt heavy and suffocating was now unlocking pathways. The darkness surrounding his father's legacy began to transform into a tapestry of potential opportunities. The realization struck him this was not just about uncovering secret dealings, but about redefining his identity. After years of feeling like a pawn in his father's game, he wanted to take control of the board. Yet, amidst his rising ambition, doubt loomed large. What if he stumbled? What if the very people he sought to ally with were predators in disguise, ready to tear apart the fragile sense of purpose he was constructing? His heart raced as the thought took root, a pit forming in his stomach, a remnant of his past fears still looming large. To combat this anxiety, Kevin decided to leverage what he had learned in his years as a clerk. He decultivated skills in negotiation, engaging people's reactions, tools shaped by countless transactions, often underestimated. So, he took a step back, breathed deeply, and deconstructed the meeting he would have with his informant. He needed to be firm yet approachable, confident but not arrogant. The task was daunting yet exhilarating. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, his plan emerged, an approach that required a delicate balance of respect and assertiveness. His hours of preparation began to forge an inner iron, a readiness to face not just the informant, but potentially the specter of his father's past that still stalked him. It was more than just a meeting, it was the crucible for his transformation. Recognizing his own resolve pushed him deeper into contemplation. In the dim light, he posited a dangerous question to himself: how far was he willing to go to disentangle himself from his father's identity? Every shred of familiarity began to hold weight. Decisions now bore the risk of irrevocability. Would he be willing to confront those dark corners even if it meant wrestling with the legacy he had long resented? When he finally glanced at the clock, it was nearing midnight. The impending meeting loomed like an avalanche, ready to either bury him or launch him into a new trajectory of existence. With a clenched jaw and renewed conviction, he acknowledged the distance he would travel in these coming days, recognizing it as the cusp of his liberation. As he prepared to close his laptop, Kevin could almost taste the victory ahead, and with a final thought echoed in his mind: was this truly his fight? The moment of truth awaited him, just beyond the veil of uncertainty. But he knew the time had come to face the very shadows that had darkened his life for so long. What truths might he uncover, and would they spark the transformation he desperately sought? The answers were tantalizingly near. Kevin stood at the entrance of the diner, the laminate tabletop sticky beneath his fingers as he fidgeted with the details of his plan. This was the day he would confront the informant once more. It was imperative to leverage his father's connections without letting fear dictate his actions. The mechanics of power, shadows he had been skirting around for too long, were now within his grasp. As he entered, every sound enveloped him, laughter mingled with the clinking of dishes and the low murmurs of conversation. Scanning the room, he spotted the informant in a back booth, his usual seat, bathed in muted light. Kevin approached with purpose but kept his heart guarded. Today would not be about the past, today was about building a new narrative. Kevin. The informant motioned for him to sit, his eyes sharp with an intelligence that foreshadowed the discussions ahead. "Let's get down to it," Kevin said, punctuating his statement with resolve. He had spent too many nights agonizing over decisions. Today he chose action. The man slid a folded piece of paper across the table. "This is a list of names connected to your father's dealings. Some are allies, while others are dangerous." His voice trailed off, emphasizing the weight of the decision Kevin was about to embark upon. He held the paper tightly, feeling the contours of destiny etched into the creases. "Then I need to speak to them. I want answers." The informant leaned back, a flicker of surprise crossing his features. "You sure about this? It could unravel more than just a few connections. Whatever I uncover, I need to confront it." Kevin's declaration echoed with clarity, propelling him forward. It was time to confront the legacy that had suffocated him for far too long. No longer merely a clerk behind the register, he was evolving into a man with agency, a relentless seeker of truth. "I'll set up meetings, but tread carefully. These people are not just business associates, they are part of a deeply complex world," the informant cautioned, his tone turning serious. "True alliances require trust, but even then, trust is often a tenuous foundation. Kevin nodded solemnly, understanding now that the quest for the truth would mirror the struggles of his own identity. He realized he was not only reclaiming his family's narrative but forging a new identity free from inherited shadows. He spent the next few days meticulously preparing. He honed his negotiation skills and crafted an approach that exuded both confidence and authenticity. Each meeting he arranged filled him with a sense of purpose. With every encounter, the oppressive grip of anxiety began to lessen. He studied his father's legacy, pinpointing where he could sow seeds of truth amid shadowy allegiances, cultivating a strong, recognized position. The culmination came unexpectedly as he held a meeting with one of his father's oldest associates. The cafe was bustling, an unsettling contrast to the serious undertones of their discussion. "Your father had a vision," the associate began, warily assessing Kevin. "But visions can turn dark, son. Are you prepared to walk in those shadows?" "More than prepared," Kevin replied, surprising himself with the fierce conviction in his voice. "I want to understand what a vision really means. If it made him who he was, it can make me too." In that moment, he realized he stood firm, not as a relic of his father's past but as an individual actively carving a future. The encounter reaffirmed his shift from passive acceptance to empowered decision-making. Each interaction fortified his emerging sense of identity. A week later, revelations began to spill out. Interwoven connections provided clarity about the empire his father had built. A burgeoning confidence seeped into Kevin's veins with each confirmation he received. The labyrinth that had been his legacy unveiled itself as he began to draw connections and understand motivations clarity amidst chaos. Finally, at a clandestine meeting to consolidate information with the major players of his father's network, Kevin felt a palpable shift. The tension in the air buzzed with anticipation. He stood before them not as Kevin the store clerk but as Kevin the man determined to reclaim his destiny. "I stand here today not just to understand my father's dealings but to define my own path moving forward," he declared, his voice resonating with newfound authority. "I want to shape these connections, and I will not be swayed by fear. My father's legacy can evolve." The silence in that room was palpable, and he reveled in it. The weight of his father's past was crumbling beneath the force of his resolve, replaced by the undeniable force of his integrity. The others absorbed his words, their glances shifting between one another, acknowledging the shift happening before them. In that instance, Kevin recognized he had not only confronted his father's legacy but transformed it, turning a potential curse into an opportunity for reinvention. No longer did he stand in the shadow of an empire defined by darkness. He was crafting his own narrative, aligning himself with truth and honesty. As the meeting closed, Kevin stepped out into the street, breathing in the cool evening air. The possibilities ahead stretched endlessly before him, infusing him with a solid confidence, a competence born of resilience and resolve. He had conquered the challenges lingering in his path, solidifying his place within the chaotic legacy while redesigning it to reflect who he was to become. It was no longer just about fear, it was about proving to himself that he could evolve beyond inherited shadows. He had asserted his identity, finally capturing the essence of what it meant to transform lives, including his own, both his fragile past and an undeniable future of promise. This was the moment that left an indelible mark on Kevin's soul, a definitive affirmation of growth. He had achieved clarity amid chaos, reclaimed agency over his past, and significantly transformed his future. If you found inspiration in Kevin's journey, you need to subscribe now to witness more transformative tales. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help others find hope in their struggles. Comment your thoughts and theories about Kevin's evolution below. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion of personal resilience.